Yeah.
You are her friend.
Yes, and she said we wanted to talk today. I hope you all had a great lunch. So moving towards the next next session for the day, we have panel discussion in line. It is all about market linkages and logistics, national and international. To join the panel discussion, I would like to call upon as a moderator Dr. Ajit Kumar Nigam, CEO, NIFT Foundation for Design and Innovation. I would like panelists to join Mr. Seleshi Lema Bekele from Government of Ethiopia. I would like to call upon Ms. Saroj Ayush, Senior Transport Specialist, World Bank Group. And I would like to call upon our guest for today, Dr. Tabassum Jamal, Chief Scientist and Professor, ACSIR, Head Business Development Group, PhD, Conclave. I am so sorry, ma'am. So we have Ms. Saroj Ayush, Senior Transport Specialist from World Bank Group. I'll correct myself. To facilitate, I would request Ms. Sonia. Sonia would facilitate Ms. Saroj Ayush. Thank you for joining, ma'am. I would like Ms. Sonia to please facilitate Dr. Tabassum Jamal. Thank you for joining, ma'am, on a very short request. Start with the discussion.
Good afternoon. Lovely lunch and in a different mode, getting slightly snoozy, but time to wake up. And because we need to really wake up. It's time to link markets to products. And that is what the discussion is going to be. Okay. So, small input from my friend Yash Arya. So what we would do during the panel, look at the idea of market linkages and product development from each of your organization's perspective. How are you looking at across the world, or a country, or a specific organization? And especially we are talking about the textile sector and the need to link the products as they produce. And you also saw handlooms and the difficulty which the producer has in order to ensure that the product reaches the market. So, would like to hear from you, ma'am. And I also would like to request you to introduce yourself. This is much more self-driven as against.
Yeah, I know. At least I won't do a mistake on my own introduction. So, hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Saroj Ayush. I'm a senior transport specialist in the World Bank. I work on logistics and transport sector in the South Asia region, and I'm glad to be here. It's a very dry topic that I'm going to talk about, and I don't think it catches much of an attention of people when we start talking about transportation and logistics. But I'll just take 5 minutes of your time to introduce you or sensitize you to what it actually means for all the startups and micro. So when I walked in, I spoke to Mr. Yash and I was asking him what is it that is expected out of me to speak on the table. and he told me that India is moving towards a 5 trillion economy, and can you speak something about that? My answer is I don't know as to how India would reach a 5 trillion economy. But what I do know is that the government of India is giving a boost to Make in India. What I do know is government of India is putting Startup India first, and there are a lot of policies which are supporting the manufacturing sector. What I also know is that the MSME industry is growing at 18.5%, that's 2019-2020 figure, and it contributes to 29% of the GDP. Another thing that I know is that all the products that are getting manufactured have to reach a particular place. And unless you belong to that particular segment of software industry where things can travel across space without anyone knowing it, things really have to move from a place to place. And apart from people, who's very, very obvious that people do move and there is a desire to move on luxury, on travel, on vacation, on meeting friends, goods don't have any such idea. Goods just have to move to reach to the consumer. And it becomes very important for MSME, especially for textile. In fact, in textile, it takes another angle, which we say this is the 5th P of marketing, which we're talking about. That's the pace. You know, it has to, the fashion industry has to reach a particular person at a particular pace, otherwise you've lost out on the market. So, and Zara happens to be one of the examples which excels on that particular area. So let me bring it back to the mundane topic of logistics, and I've written a few points. We worked a lot with the MSME segment of the country, and we work across economies, as you know. And it's always talked about, and I think everyone in this room would be knowing that India has got a 13.5% logistics cost, and India is kind of trying to reduce that. Good, well said, but is it really 13.5%? The first stylized fact that I would like you to take back is no, this is not true for MSME segment. It is specifically not true for the textile segment if we are talking about, because there the costs of logistics is even higher. Now, what does that mean for the segment? It means that this is happening to be another of your competitive advantages in the segment. If you do not reduce this cost, if you do not achieve on the pace, if you're not reliably reaching where you're supposed to reach, if you do not make sure that the person gets you the feedback from the whole logistics channel, you are not there in the game, if at all you're there in the manufacturing sector. So that's the importance of logistics sector, which comes in not simply on the cost, but also on the pace and the reliability that we're talking about. Second stylized factor that I'm wanting you to take away from this meeting from my side is that it is a competitive advantage that restricts or allows you to expand to various economies. So if you're talking about trade, if you're talking about having to reach your product to various geographies, this is the cost that you are supposed to be bothered about. Also so, because when we talk about the sphere of influence, there are certain costs which are directly under the influence of the manufacturer, which are the production costs, the factory costs, the administrative costs, and the expenses which we're talking about. There are certain costs which are outside the influence of the manufacturer, and there are only two such costs. One is the policy and the regulatory hurdles which you have to clear, and those are the costs. And second is the logistics cost. It is determined by an external person, and you've got very little control on the external person, and that's where the role of the government becomes very important to make sure that you are supported. When we talk about the role of the government, that brings me to my third stylized fact that I want you to take up. The third fact is that this segment is completely unorganized. So if you think about moving a product, say this piece of paper from here to there, you will have to cross various layers and channels. There would be a storage, there would be a warehouse operator, there would be a bank, there would be a truck operator, railway operator, shipping line operator, containers, there would be a freight forwarding agency, custom house agents, DGFTs, Department of Customs, Department of MSME, Department of Finance, and I can go on endlessly the number of people that you'll have to deal with. So what does it, there are two takeaways on this, one for the private sector and one for the government. And we're working along with the government to bring, and what are these two takeaways? They both come to the same thing. The first is, do we have this segment which has professional players over there? We can take care of the entire segment. I can either concentrate on making a piece of fashion garment, or I can concentrate on handling this entire gamut on chain of people which form a part of the supply chain. So there has to be another professional person who handles all these things on my behalf, and I just pick up a phone and say, okay, what's the cost? I need it to be reaching there, when will it reach? That's what we would need. So that raises a question as to what is the penetration of third-party logistics service providers in the country. And that's the difference where the government, the takeaway for the government is that they need to look at whether this is available, and if it is not available, what is the kind of employment opportunity that it is generating, because even the third-party logistics comes under the MSME segment. So it's actually a circular thing which starts from there and comes back to it, and also helps in creating employment and reduction of cost. Looks like a win-win situation, but certainly, my friends, we are far away from that at present, and we would like to move in that direction. With that, I stop. Thanks.
So disparate elements, unorganized sector, and all I see is chaos. How do I move my products? Can technology play a role? That's a question to you. And what kind of technologies can help streamline this? Before I move to the representative from Ethiopia.
Absolutely. The good thing about Indian community is that they work on jugaad system. So there are a lot of people who are there to do a jugaad, and whenever there is an opportunity, and we can see that during COVID time.
And ma'am, for the international audience, if you could explain what jugaad is.
Okay. All right. Jugaad is an Indian word, and it exists in this country context where people use their information skill to make a solution happen in the most complex and challenging situation. Not really relying on a structured solution, but creating a solution to suit a particular requirement. And that's state-of-the-art, customized solution, and you can keep on adding the numbers. So as I was giving you an example of this particular, it gives you an opportunity. So if you see the COVID lockdown period, the Danzos, and the group of people who started taking over this logistics supply, you did not need to step out of your house to get your groceries. You could just order the groceries, and there was this another person who would pick it up, pay, come back, take the money from you, and go give it back to the shopkeeper. So that's the chain that it got established. However, what we need to do is to look at it at a broader level. This is a very small, as I say, customized solution, but we need to take it up at a broader level. At a broader level, I'm glad you brought that point up. Technology really helps. And we've heard blockchain and artificial intelligence coming in, where various people, so as I said, it's a supply chain, it's a supply network actually, but in the supply chain, the blockchain actually allows space for various actors to act simultaneously.
In an integrated
manner. And, but to bring all of these together, the technology exists, the people exist. What we need is a topmost layer of a company or an organization which brings them together. That's something that needs a little more facilitation than what we're seeing today.
Thank you for this. And I would like to request the representative from Ethiopia to tell us how does it work in Ethiopia and rest of Africa. And I've been speaking to a number of people that you're looking at Europe as a market. How do things move? Market linkages for your products to reach the European Union or North America, as an example.
Thank you very much. I think these are very important aspects of the event. Production and marketing, these are very important two components which are inseparable. One cannot exist without the other. Of course, in today's globalized world, marketing is a driving force for production. So, particularly this is relevant with regard to the micro, small and medium enterprise. The segments have been encountered with marketing problems. Yesterday we have heard the presentation that these segments are very often encounter with selling their product, though they do have the competency, the expertise, and everything, but they are in difficulty to sell out their product to the right destination. So creating marketing linkage is very important within and outside, of course, countries. Let me be practical in this regard with the context and experience of Ethiopia. Most of the micro and the small and the medium enterprise that we have in our country, they have had dependent upon importing fabrics, trims and accessories from outside. So as a government, we have been trying to build the domestic capability, the vertical integration, so that the sector can grow and develop in the right direction, because the value addition, the net gain that we are getting is extremely very, very low if we import each and everything from abroad. So after a very relentless effort, we have able to attract one very important Indian company known as Kanori Africa Textile Company. Kanori Africa Textile Company, it is specialized in producing denim fabrics. It is one of the unique in Eastern Africa and Ethiopia. So this company, it has able to supply to the micro, small and medium enterprise the required fabrics of denim, where we have been importing from China, from India, from the rest of the world earlier. And it has outsourced the garment to these companies, and these companies able to grow very fast for the last 2-3 years. The number of micro, small enterprise that we have 5 years ago was only 1,000 in numbers. Now it has reached more than 3,500. It is because of this linkage that we have created. It has created a market, a product linkage, at the same time market linkage. This is very important, actually, in boosting the development and growth of small enterprise in particular. My sister this morning, she has shown us the digitalization, the fashion trend, the design, and all these things. And all these fabrics, at this point in time, partially we are producing domestically. And this linkage has created a very strong development of the segment. In another aspect, it is an agrarian economy. Ethiopia is an agrarian economy. 80% of the livelihood of Ethiopians highly depend on agriculture. We are trying to transform this structural economy to industrialization. This morning, my colleague, Dr. Milkesa, has presented that we have built 3 integrated agro-processing parks throughout the country, where these parks, they collect raw form of agricultural products and would be transformed into more value-adding products in the park. We have one park known as Yirgalem Industrial Park. We have one Chinese company and one Indian company over there. The Chinese companies are specialized in edible oil manufacturing, particularly avocado as an input. This company, it has a very big capacity, and it has connected with over 70,000 farmers to grow avocado tree. and supply to this company so that it process to final oil form and export to the rest of the world. So in a way, the agriculturalists, they have secured a market with the company, and the company has secured a production supply from them. So this is the type of linkage that we would like to create really to transform the industry. Likewise, the dairy product, the milk producing company, it has connected over 20,000 pastoralists. So you can imagine how really, this is how really agriculture can transform to industrialization. So this is one product can be sold to the other as a market destination, and the other to get the product from the others. So this is the type of linkage that we would like to create in our country so that they can support each other and develop together. We have created also a buying house, a trading house, where it collects from micro, small, and medium enterprise products and sell out either domestically or internationally. So this is a type of linkage that we need to create really to help the industry, the micro and small enterprise in particular, and to grow together. This is very important in the subcontracting aspect, the ancillary, the Japan's experience of Toyota. They are sourcing more than 400 input from us. So this is really the type of linkage that we need to create globally as well as domestically. Of course, sourcing companies, buying companies of known brands, they do have a very important role in this regard. We are selling to Europe, we are selling the textile and garment product to America through the market access opportunities that have been created. We do have a privilege on that. To that, we try to identify the right buyer and connect our producer with this right buyers and to support and strengthen this relationship, the market linkage relationship. So this is how really I look at the linkage that we are talking about. Thank you.
Fantastic. You used a word, finding the right buyer. I'm hooked on it. And ma'am, what I would like to understand from you, what do we really mean by a market in the context of the fashion and textile industry, and how do we aggregate demand? Because it's only when the demand is there we can look at logistics or even reverse logistics. That comes later, but there has to be a demand. How do we get the demand, and what would be the various parameters of a demand aggregation? Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Yash, for giving me this opportunity to come in and speak. And thank you, Chair, who raised the right kind of question. And this 2-day deliberations in this meet, I hope that we will reach to some conclusion that how we improve upon these issues. But I think let me give a little intro of myself first, and then the background I'm coming from. And this will be different from what you have been talking about since yesterday. I am a senior scientist with CSIR, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. Now you may ask, CSIR का role क्या है textile में, but I will tell you how it works, and it's very interesting. So CSIR being one of the research organization of Government of India for last 75 years. It has 38 laboratories all over India and some 5 research extension centers. And why it got originated, I am talking about, post-independence, that with the scientific temper, what our first Prime Minister talked about, that how this scientific temper can be observed or can be taken forward or can be taken into industries to develop for the international kind of collaboration or say competition. So what actually the idea was that every region has got some resource endowment and special resources as far as human resources is concerned and traditional knowledge is concerned. So the idea was that how to capture that traditional knowledge and human resource put in use together with a kind of research background and with a kind of support of the education background. And that is how you see all the clusters, because the cluster comes from the traditional knowledge, and textile is a big cluster in India. So if you talk about the Banaras cluster, talk about the Mumbai cluster, talk about the Khadi cluster, you talk about any cluster in textile, it is all widespread. And it is the biggest employment generator in as far as the industry, MSME is concerned. So, keeping this in mind, all over India, there are different CSI laboratories, and they are working very ambitiously, linking with the research institutions of the state, plus the educational institution and the industry, be it small, medium, or big. So coming back to the CSIR, that last 25 years ago, when we got some guidelines from WTO, as far as we talk about the export linkage, the marketing into export, then you have to abide by those guidelines. So one single point was that Indian fabric cannot enter into the market unless you have these parameters. And that letter comes to the ministry. And then ministry kahan jayegi? Then ministry will immediately go to the research institutions, because there are some technological aspect. And when you said what technology will do, I will tell you what technology has done. So, because this kind of a thing that comes to the ministries, because they take all these issues and then distribute the funds to the departments so that they can do research forward. So one such problem was bleeding of colors of Indian clothes. So this was, brainstormed at least for 2-3 months, how do we go about. Then our National Chemical Laboratory, which is in Pune, they came out of some solution, because they developed some new chemicals through which our Indian fabric was able not to bleed the colors. So what I'm trying to say, that coming into this segment, what this panel discussion is on, that how do we market linkages? Market linkages will be sourced from each and every angle. It is not just the demand, it is not just the industry, it is not just the government. You have to play a part. So we call it triple helix approach, where research, industry, and government, they are the partner. It's a very ideal situation. It does not happen many of the cases, but how it happened in CSIR case, I'll just give you some examples. Because research is not just the paper and pen, or your idea. It is that how do you bring that into the implementation? How do you bring that innovative idea into the practice? And because in CSIR is known for, as an abbreviation, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. So industries which are prominent and taking all our foreign exchange and employment generation and things like that, CSIR is very conscious about that. So we have a networking of amongst the lab, where we do kind of institutional mechanism, network mechanism, where we coordinate with the industry, and we take, for example, the mechanism is that we take a sponsored project. Though we are from Government of India, Ministry of Science and Technology, but we will have the sponsored projects from maybe industry, from the ministries, like the one we did for DCH, Development Commissioner of Handicraft. So they were bothered that what kind of technological upgradation you can suggest so that our designs and they can be having, and the quality first of all, because if you want to have a market mechanism, export market, then you have to stand for the quality. So how do we do that? That will come from the research. And one small institutional mechanism, then only it can be possible. So what we do now, last 10 years, CSIR has developed in each lab business development group. So it is not that because a scientist is doing a research, he is not a marketing person, and he should not waste his or her energy into asking for marketing or searching for the scope of marketing. What he or she has done, his innovative idea, and how do we do it? But then there is a business development group sitting over there who will network your idea or your product to an industry.
But actually, it is this thought I wanted to carry it forward. Commercialization of research,
Yes.
a very important element, and that's been bothering the country for quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
There are lovely research, but they do not see the light of the day. You have technological readiness levels, you have manufacturing readiness,
Yeah.
all those things are there. How, in your opinion, should research really be commercialized? Though it may not be happening,
Yeah.
but what is your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, it has to be, research is not meant for shelves. So now we say it lab to land. What you are doing in lab, it should reach to land. So research, commercialization, but what I told you, that this is not a work of scientists to find out the market. But then what model we have globally, that whenever you conceive an idea, you have a governing body of that project, or project formulation, or say when you submit it for funding and things like that. There itself you have those industrial partners with you who are agreeing to take that technology as far as you come to technology readiness level 8. Now I tell you the problem is because every CSIR lab, we will work on the standards, and there again I will come to the NPL, National Physical Laboratory, right here in Pusa Road. So they work on the standards. How do we then? Because if you don't have standards, you cannot enter into the international market, or maybe here also if the competition is so high. So the point is that how do you make it? Commercialization is very important of technologies. For that, you have to have at the very inception level, you have to have those people in your team so that they can understand what you are conceiving and what you are making, whether it will see the daylight. You see, so there itself, it's the right kind of assessment is required. But what happens as far as our routine kind of funding is concerned, that yes, you have better linkages and you have this idea, and then you got the grant, you do the research, do the recommendation.
The question is, what happens
Yes.
after the grant?
Yes, so after the grant, now what I'm telling you, that we, like last 10 years development in CSIR, I can talk about CSIR only, that we are responsible for the part of implementation also. Because when, as far as in my lab, I will say it's not a wet lab, because wet labs are where the experimentation are going on, but NISTATS, where I'm coming from, is National Institute for Science, Technology and Development Studies. So we are into the policy advisory and policy advocacy. So when such and such things come, and they do come, and whenever we speak loudly or say maybe the very true or say harsh, then we are asked in the parliament that you come and reply what have you spoken. But research cannot be done in any kind of limitation or foundation. So you have to answer, you have to face those questions. That's fine. But now the situation is that, like last our few DG, like I will talk about Professor last DG Grish Sahni, and before that Mashelkar. He, right from that Dr. Mashelkar time, that every scientist has to earn 30% of your salary. That means you have to have industry linkages. So when you have industry linkages, then only you will know that what is this vicious circle. So that kind of practice, and then we have this technology readiness level. Each lab will show what technology they have developed, that what level they are okay. Because at the level of 5 or 6, they are still in the infancy incubation stage.
Just wanted to take this forward. These structures are fine, but we have moved away from industrial age to an age which is Industry 4.0 and beyond. We're looking at Internet of Value as against Internet of Information. Our whole organizational structures have to undergo a change. And I would like to understand from the World Bank Group that artificial intelligence can be used for aggregating demand. There are multiple ways of doing it. So how do you think, what kind of role can AI play in the fashion in the textile segment and with social media listing happening?
While I was listening to you, Professor Nikam, as well as Madam, there's this small little detail which cropped up in my mind, and that would be of interest to the students and my young friends sitting over there. During Mahalanobis time, when the first planning commission was being set, and we had the first and the second plan which was brought in, it was a deliberate attempt not to give too much of money to textile sector, remember, and at the expense of the heavy industries. They wanted to spend too much on heavy industries, the two factor theory of Mahalanobis. And at that time, textile actually saw a dip in the entire percentage output of the GDP. It saw a dip. It's only in the recent years that the textile is once again seeing a climb up, and there are 2-3 factors which leads to it. First factor is your geographical coverage. It's currently no more restricted to a particular area where you are selling, because the Internet of Things, or say these e-commerce platform, have actually opened up the world for you. So at your place, and this is specifically relevant for MSME, and that's why I'm bringing this up, you don't need to go to the market to sell your products anymore. You are sitting right at your, in your house, in your factory. You've designed a product, and somebody in as far off as Ethiopia would like to have that product, and there is a laptop where you just click in and say, okay, I like it. Now what that has done specifically to the fashion industry and textile I'm talking about, it has done a little to the jewelry industry as well, is that a customized offering which was hitherto not possible has been sent to a place that was hitherto not possible.
So you could be referring to those 3D models and mass customizations of various kinds.
Now how does he select? And that's where artificial intelligence and Internet of Things comes in. Now we are seeing a development, and I'm not the new generation, I'm an old generation.
That's out there.
Yes, so now what they're developing is, if you see the internet, there's a 3D space, and you can actually try it on, you can try a shade of lipstick as well. So, and you know which, and you know which one to order. And that's the power of technology which is behind it. Now where my concern comes from, and what World Bank has been trying to put across to the governments and economies, is that this scale is moving at a much faster pace than you can realize. It's changing every second, and it is going to change every nanosecond by the second. The problem is that, are your physical systems geared up to meet that kind of demand? So when you asked ma'am to talk about demand side interventions, the demand is exploding actually. But is your physical system really ready to move it? Or is it going to be replaced by 3D printing? We're getting into some kind of a science fiction story, but
it's happening, it's becoming a reality.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I personally feel, and I've done a lot of work on this segment, and I think we have a long way to go. We think we have a long way to go, and this demand explosion has to be met from the supply side. And that's where the MSME needs to be supported, either through research or through market linkages, which you've been talking about.
So let me ask you a counter question there. We've been talking about the supply side, that the products, physical products have to move. But in tomorrow's world, when we look at metaverse, what we really need that? But they become just physical commodities, and the real action moves to metaverse, and you're playing on the digital space. By avatar is the most important thing, and not the physical piece of clothing.
Okay, so
Sorry to bring that up.
no, I'm all ears to it, because we've been having this discussion in and out, and this is actually a reality which is facing us. And unfortunately, we feel, at least I feel that I'm a little outdated to really answer this. But what hope that lies, and I'm quoting one of the topmost AI personnel over here, is he says that the only 3 things that are going to remain in this world when metaverse comes in. Okay, so it could, I mean, and I do not think that technology, at least what we see and the way it is going, that it can really create the experience, the physical feel of goods, the physical feel of a human interaction, and the physical feel of the geography that you're in. That is something that maybe the internet might not be able to create. And there I see a lot of role of transportation and logistics, so at least I will remain with my job. I don't know about the future. Sorry, to make that light. Yeah.
And what is the role of technology as far as logistics is concerned in Ethiopia? At what stage are they in? Ethiopia and the broader African market?
Yeah, in terms of logistics, I think we are working on it.
Okay.
There are a long way, to grow. But we are really, because without efficient and effective logistics system, it will be very difficult to compete in the global market. We have introduced the railway mechanism, which we have had only one railway from the port Djibouti to Addis, but now we have expanded this throughout the country. So the just-in-time, because marketing is all about delivering your goods and service on time.
The fifth PS, ma'am.
Exactly. So we are working on that, and of course it is a very developing country. We are trying all our level best in terms of infrastructure, in terms of logistics, and making doing business easy. So logistics, it has a paramount importance in really influencing the competitiveness of any given country. So technologically, we are trying to be supported by the technology. The vehicles, the fleets, they are under control of the new version of the technology, where your driver is and everything. So we are trying to expand all this facility, but as a developing country, there are a long way to go.
Right, thank you. And ma'am, want to also understand how would performance fabrics, which are becoming, and technical textiles, two important areas which are catching the importance, catching the eye. How would we link the market for them to production centers? Especially, this requires a large amount of thinking. Governments world over are working on this. So what are your quick thoughts on that, you being a scientist?
Very interesting question. I mean, when we talk about the special fabrics or special textiles, IIT Delhi has a separate department of textiles, they do textile engineering. And I was so glad to see a few students, it is I think some 5-6 years back, they were working on the special textile, which keeps our soldiers warm in the minus temperature also. So those kind of special textiles we are talking about in different kind of climatic zones. And we had this conference in FICCI that time. And there, because it is a forum of industries also. So they picked up the idea from there, and some industry went into the production of that, and now it is, it is there in the market. So there are a lot of institutional arrangements for these kind of special textiles. And that is how, what I will say that the point I was emphasizing when I opened up in my points, that institutional linkages, they are very important as far as the supply side is concerned or demand side is concerned. Until unless we have those institutional linkages very genuine and strong and trustworthy, you cannot move on. Like for example, I was having a chat with Dolly ji in lunchtime, and she's also the technocrat in this field. She's the mentor of many startups. So she gave me a few insights, and she's right that our fashion industry, especially in textile, we are eco-friendly की तो दूर की बात है, बहुत ज़्यादा pollution से भरी हुई है. So how do we consider that? So eco-friendliness and you save your environment and things like that, वो कहीं और की बातें हैं. But like if you go to Surat, again a cluster, textiles, art silk cluster, you see the kind of conditions, people are working there. It is so inhuman. You just can't stand in that heat for a minute, and they are there because they are paid hourly basis. And let me complete. And because at one point of time, India used to have only silk, cotton, these structured and authentic fabrics in textiles. But now if you see, because our textile industry demand side, because the cost effectiveness, the art silk, the suit which is sold by the Banaras house for 30,000 by Ekaya, that in art silk, so much of virgins, you can have just 4,000 rupees in that color. So the variants and the kind of range the art silk has proven, and that is how you are there in the wall market, in the Walmart, and in US you get all these suits for just $10, $20, because the market is there, because so many South Indians. I know this thing, my observations, but it's not that, because those people who want to wear silk, they will wear silk only. So from 1,000 rupees a meter, or say maybe 5,000 a meter, you bring down to 50 rupees a meter. How do you do it? So some kind of research has gone into it already. So I'm not saying that, but to create a market, those institutional linkages were there. That is how it could happen. Like, take the example of Northeast, because Northeast is again known for its heritage, traditional knowledge, there is that, all that. So because we have clusters, and we have our CSR lab, NIST, Jorhat. They were working that what kind of textile Northeast can promote. Then they have some World Bank project there in Guwahati, and now the IIT has also come up over there. So these institutions, they sat together and created a demand of that banana textile. Banana fibers textile banana, and that is very much favored in the international market because it's eco-friendly. And I would not be surprised to say that the kind of junk, our great nation, America, they produce, because they waste a lot as far as paper is concerned. When they cry about pollution and the blame come on India, but the kind of waste they produce as far as paper plates, paper cups, and other things they do, that garbage they send to China because they are not able to process that in their own country. So what China is doing, that from that ocean waste, they are making shoes from that waste, and they are selling it back, and $400 a pair, because eco-friendly, ocean waste, because the tag has come. So like that, eco-friendly के हम जब बात करते हैं, तो Northeast में now there are so many international agencies, they are putting up their funds to promote these clusters who are making fibers from banana. And I saw it myself with my own eyes, that how beautiful it's coming out. And from jute. So it is demand, supply, both sides, where institutional linkages will always work. I think we just, leave us out the negativity of the policy implementation and this, that. But if there are some 20% people in every institutions are there who have this kind of thing, that yes, my country will promote these kind of industry and say, we will be one nation in textile, known. So these kind of linkages have to be established. And there are people who are doing it. And that is how we are surviving.
So my question to you was this. When we are talking about the linkages, easy to establish linkages where the production has some quantities. But there are places and there are products with micro quantities, and which can also add to employment a lot in that particular region. What kind of institutional mechanism, and later on technology, how do we create such a...
See, nowadays, like I tell you one example. This Kaziranga University is placed in Jorhat. It's like MIT of North India. Because you must be observing that in Delhi University, you see so many Northeast students, because there was not, a private university set up over there. But for last 10 years, this Kaziranga University has come up with Kaziranga National Park. And I think Khedan Group is a private university. So keeping in mind the importance of what you said, because they are the industry people who have established this university. So they have established their departments and their professors and their collaborators like that it is a very beautiful synergy over there.
To take the same question to you from a technology aspect, because this is a conversation it's been happening. They say that in certain regions you have micro production only, and the international demand is of a higher level. So the linkage becomes very tenuous. It tends to break because the requirement is of 500 pieces, can be maybe only 40 pieces can be produced as an example. So are there any ways of trying to handle this problem?
Can I just add before she
Yeah, of course.
take a point of view? Adding to this, that how the small bits and pieces should be taken care of. I'm so proud that CSR labs have established their service centers in each lab, so that these small entrepreneurs, if they want the seasoning of their fabric or say whatever the process of the fabric, they can come to the lab, they can pay because it's subsidized. Is subsidized. This is for the textile side, but if you talk about Purja, where the pottery, when we are coming to MSME, so small, very tiny and very micro level entrepreneurs, they don't have that much money that they should establish their own, workshop or this, that. So they bring their material to the service center, they pay the minimum amount, and they get their service done. It's win-win situation because CSI is earning. So the service centers, they are beautifully placed and they are silent, they are not making any
You want a good answer, you want a bad answer?
I want a real answer.
So the bad answer is, I'll finish it off in 60 seconds. So the bad answer is that the economies of scale don't work. If you don't have economies of scale, then we call what is it called a customized solution. And customized solutions are expensive. So you really need to pay a lot. The good answer is what she said, and not only limited to what she talked about CSIR. I think the MSME ministry is working along a lot of regions to create what are called technological incubators or technology centers, where these small items, so just to give you an example to understand what I'm trying to say. So if you need to customize a chair, and there's a demand from my friend from Ethiopia that I need that kind of a chair, and some XYZ sitting in a very small area can produce only 40 chairs. So is there a support system which can enable that person who's producing 40 to make 400? Because the demand he's saying is 400. And that's where these technological innovation centers come in, which allow you to take care of the lathe machines, the kind of bending that would be required, the kind of technology testing that would be required. And I'll just end this by saying that the ratio of this technological support center or technology excellence center in India currently is very low. And the bank is actually supporting to increase the numbers. It's most probably where we need 300, we currently have only 5 or 6. So it's a huge scale, and the way and I'm glad also that the government of India has recognized this and is really stepping up its work in that direction. So we will be seeing some fruitful outcome over there. But this was technology at root level. At higher level, I'll let my friends over there decide.
Right, and
can I just add one more point, because this is a very interesting forum, and I believe there are many young entrepreneurs passed out from NIFs, they are there, so it is information for them also. That's why I'm sorry to take this time.
No, please go ahead.
And again, coming back to the linkages part, that when we were doing one study of for handicraft, textile, carpets, things like that. So again, technology application was. So then we found, because we went till the core, what are the problems of the artisans and what kind of technology application they want. Technology doesn't mean always, or innovation doesn't mean big machineries. It's simply an idea. It is simply a placement of their instruments, or it is simply a kind of a working atmosphere. So and in that process we came to know. You talk about the blue pottery of Rajasthan. You talk about the Chamba Romal of Madhya Pradesh. You talk about the zari work of Lucknow Nawab, because the whole attire or the dresses used to be with the golden wires. So all those things now are disappearing, because first of all, the people who are doing, they don't want to forward this traditional knowledge to outside world. Many of these things, and some, because there are now the next generation, they don't want to be in that same kind of work. They want to have white collar job. So there are many textile fabrics. There are many areas which are extinguishing. They are just disappearing from the market. So what we thought that this embedded knowledge or traditional knowledge is in a heritage of India, and it should not be stopped there. So what we tried and we did implementation part, I'm telling you. Yes, because those master craft persons or say awardees of these particular special knowledge, so we proposed to the minister and to the development commissioner that they should be part of NIFT faculty and NIT faculties, and we did that. So now maybe it's an information that those kind of traditional knowledge and heritage fabric, those artisans, they come to NIFT and NIT and they teach. So they are now empaneled rotation wise. So this I part you feel very satisfied. Working, because if you alone or every single person can think that I should do at least one thing which is implemented, which you did.
True enough. Last word from you before I open it up for questions. Anything you would like to say?
Yes, I agree with ma'am to increase the productivity or the production capacity of a given company or enterprise from 40 chair up until 400 chair. I don't know what type of technology really we can really put on that. But if there is idle capacity utilization, yes, I agree. But to me, encouraging new startup is another way of really tackling this such type of to satisfy the demand. One. Second, the point I mentioned, the buying house, trading house, collecting similar standardized items from different micro enterprise, so that to satisfy the given demand. This is another way of really tackling such type of, particularly micro and small enterprise. They are encountered with marketing. So the Ministry of Micro and Small Enterprise, in our case, the Manufacturing Industry Development Ministry, they are tasked really to facilitate, really to make a consortium of different firms to produce the right product to the right market. So we can tackle.
Open to questions. Young minds and even senior minds, if I can use that terminology. Any questions to the panel? Yes, sir has a question. Senior minds coming in? Can you give Jane, please?
Myself, Dr. Surendra, from Government of India, Ministry of Textiles. My question is that the work which is being carried out in the labs as a scientist, I find that a lot of research work is going on in the lab, but it has not been transferred to the lab. The fault is at the scientist end, because you have to facilitate your research at the ground level to the person who is not aware of the technology. So, what action you are taking in this direction?
Yeah, I told you. I mean, this is a very basic, in the sense, query, and of course, one can question. But again, I would come to the point that when you, as far as the hardboard technologies are concerned, like if I talk about that, how do you develop tiles out of waste? Then a scientist will work on the chemistry of that. He will not go and see the market. So it is basically the foresightedness or networking worthiness of the director of that lab. I come to that point.
Oh, okay.
So he or she, whosoever is head, they should see, because what happens, that in our system, in our government or say minister or things like that, promotions are based, how many papers they have published, how many lab level you have got the awards and recognition. They will not see that in how many advisory board of industry you are there. So that self-assessment or say the career development of our worthy CSIR, I mean these I will say that assessment parameters, they should have been changed long time back. Because people were busy in writing papers, getting patents. Patent is good because that is how you are known to the world. Like you are known for Basmati rice, you are known for neem, you are known for rice.
Why it is not being percolated to the grassroots level, to the for the beneficiaries? Because the research which is being carried out,
Yeah.
it should percolate to the level so that
No, you
it
cannot
should
say
be,
it has
should be
not. It
functional.
has not to the level where it should have been.
Yeah, it should be functional.
Yes.
Because why we are lagging? Because we are lagging because of the knowledge or the research
Yeah.
which is carried out by the scientists like you is not being properly percolated.
I'm not a marketing person, I'm not an MBA. Why should I?
It's
do it?
just
That's why I
confined
said-
to the lab,
that's
on
why
the
I said-
papers, it is lab to the
That's why I said
paper.
the head of the lab
It's not being transferred.
is more.
So that's why in that part we are lagging. Otherwise, we have a lot of ideas.
But if
India
you
is
see
having
now, if you see, there are so many medicines from CDRI, our Lucknow lab in the market. Point is that CSR never bothered about that our logo should be there on the product. You see, you have given the technology, you have given that knowledge, and then the whole thing comes to the industry.
But we have
So
to
there
follow
are
the-
many levels, but
We have
now
to make it functional.
you have to make it functional.
Yeah,
Things
yeah.
are being functional. Things are being functional. I
A lovely discussion. I think we're going to enjoy a cup of tea on this point.
Proper marketing and advertisement is required.
Madam, actually, what I have found that there are linkages between industry, research organization, government organization are really missing. And this is the only reason that percolation from the downside or commercialization of product is really having the difficulties.
Can I come in over here? I'm just in the defense of, because it's not possible for an organizational person to defend that particular organization. The triple helix structure that she's been talking about of research and the administration and the industry is something that world over they're realizing that it works. The problem is that it requires a lot of institutional effort, and that is something which
And an honest approach.
and it needs a little bit of work.
I'm telling you. Because there are many labs which are the star labs. They are doing a lot of business because their directors are visionaries. They are taking their technologies to the international markets.
All right, thank you so much. Really enjoyed this conversation with all of you. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This fight will be on. Always.
Wait a minute. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.